Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different and a little dangerous. Imagine this. You open your eyes to the bright, golden light of early morning, the kind that feels both ancient and oppressive. The air smells like warm olives, old sweat, and something unmistakably dead. You're not in your bed. You're not even in your century. You're lying in a dusty alleyway made of cracked limestone, and a dog is peeing suspiciously close to your head. Welcome to the Roman Empire. You sit up dazed, bare-skinned, and already regretting your life choices. The street is bustling with people in togas, tunics, and suspiciously little footwear. Someone's yelling in Latin. A goat trots past like it owns the place. Somewhere, someone's being whipped, and not in a fun way. You blink. Maybe this is a dream. Maybe you fell asleep watching a gladiator movie. Nope. The sun is too hot. The ground is too hard. And the hunger in your stomach is too real. This is Rome. This is real. And spoiler, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is, just to remind yourself you're still in the present. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't have a name. You don't have clothes. And as you quickly learn from a passing fruit vendor who throws a rotten fig at your chest, you don't have manners either. The people here move quickly with purpose. You shuffle, confused and butt naked, using a discarded rag to form what can generously be called a toga. It's more moldy curtain than fashion statement, but at least it covers the essentials. The first thing that hits you isn't the heat. It's the sound. The entire city thrums with life. Hammering, clattering, shouting, praying, arguing. Everyone's doing something, and none of it involves standing around like a confused time traveler. You step into the street and almost immediately get shoved by a cart, pulled by a donkey with a death wish. It's here that reality sinks in. You're alone, unsheltered, and completely dependent on your ability to adapt to a world that literally crucifies people for stealing bread. You wander aimlessly until your stomach stages a full-blown rebellion. You pass a stall selling what look like pancakes, but they smell like feet and vinegar. Still, you steal one when the vendor isn't looking, and the taste is somehow worse than the guilt. Welcome to Roman street food, where the main ingredients are grain, fish sauce, and existential despair. Historians still argue whether common Romans had access to a varied diet. Some say the average pleb subsisted mostly on grain and olives. Others argue that fish sauce, garum, gave food variety, if also a side of botulism. Either way, your first meal in Rome has a texture that feels like betrayal. As you walk, you notice something odd. People are staring, but not just because you look like a hungover barbarian. They're looking at your posture, your confusion, your complete lack of understanding about how to cross a street without getting trampled by a chariot. You're a walking anachronism. And in this world, standing out is the fastest way to become someone's property. You duck into a side alley to escape the attention and trip over a pile of what you hope is mud. Nope. Human waste. Rome has public sewers, sure, but most people just toss their night jars out the window. The phrase "heads up" takes on a whole new, horrifying meaning. As you wipe your feet in shame, a pair of kids pass by and throw rocks at you. One of them shouts something like "Homo sign tunica." which loosely translates to man with no clothes. You consider yelling back, but remember you don't actually speak Latin. Not really. You just know it. Somehow, part of the time swap package. Apparently. Thanks, mysterious time vortex. For a fleeting second, you wonder if anyone else from your world is here. Another lost soul? Someone you can team up with, form a buddy comedy survival duo? But no, everyone looks too grounded in this world. They carry themselves with a resigned kind of energy, like they've always known their place in the social pyramid, and it's somewhere near the bottom, but at least not underneath it. You, on the other hand, are a walking question mark. You spot a public fountain and rush toward it, splashing your face with the cold water. It helps slightly. But then you see someone eyeing you from across the square, a man with a short beard, a scroll in one hand, and a face like sour wine. He mutters something under his breath and points. Two other men join him, both wearing the kind of uniform that screams, "I enforce things badly." Panic rises. You do what any sane person would do in ancient Rome when you're dressed like a vagrant and being approached by officials. You run. You sprint down twisting alleyways, knocking over a crate of eels. Why there always eels? Slipping on cobblestones, and finally collapsing behind the temple. You pant, sweat-drenched, eyes wide. This world isn't just hard. It's actively trying to kill you. A soft voice behind you says, "You're new." You jump, ready to bolt again, but the speaker is an old woman, seated on a broken column, peeling figs with a dagger. She looks at you like she's seen 100 versions of you before, and they all failed. "Best find a name," she says, "and a reason for being here. Else someone will give you both, and you won't like what they choose." You nod, shaken, because she's right. This isn't just about survival. It's about identity. In a world obsessed with who you are and where you fit, being a nobody is worse than being poor. It's being disposable. That's when it hits you. Your goal. You need a name, a purpose, a way to exist in this brutal, beautiful machine of empire. Because if you don't, you'll be ground into its gears without even leaving a smear. You stand shaky but resolute. The first step is simple: become someone. What could go wrong? You wake up again. This time curled under the eaves of a crumbling insular wall, your toga curtain wrapped tight around you like a sad burrito. It's barely dawn, but Rome is already groaning to life. Somewhere nearby, a rooster screams its last note before someone shouts at it. A vendor is setting out questionable loaves of bread. The air smells like burnt olive oil, old bronze, and disappointment. You're still nameless, still aimless, but now, thanks to yesterday's impromptu foot chase, officially a wanted mystery wrapped in mildew and street grime. Not a great resume. So today, you decide you're going to find your place in Roman society. A name, a status, a job, something that stops people from pointing at you like you're an escaped lunatic from the House of the Vestals. You peek into a polished bronze mirror nailed outside a wine shop. The reflection is unkind. Your curtain toga is now more rag than robe. Your hair is sticking out in ways that would get you sacrificed to Jupiter for bad omens. Your face says lost peasant, but your eyes say, "Please don't enslave me." You need a backstory. Everyone here has one. Son of a freedman, cousin of a consul, distant relative of a minor deity. It doesn't matter how accurate it is. In ancient Rome, half your social worth is storytelling, and the other half is having sandals that don't explode when you walk. You approach a barbershop. because image is everything. It's loud, filled with men arguing about chariot races and local taxes. The barber eyes you suspiciously, but you trade a rock you carved into the vague shape of a coin for a trim. He grumbles, shrugs, and snips your hair with the energy of a man who's seen worse heads. "Name?" he asks mid-snip. You freeze. Your first instinct is to say your real name, but that sounds like someone who installs routers in Cincinnati. Not very Roman. You need something that sounds noble, or at least not like a barn animal. Gaius. You blurt, Gaius something. Gaius, don't ask too many questions. Gaius Anonymous. Gaius. The barber repeats, unimpressed. Gaius what? Your brain scrambles. You look around and spot a faded mural of a dolphin spearing a fish. Delphinus, you say, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Gaius Delphinus. The barber rolls his eyes but doesn't press it. He's been paid in pebble money. His standards are low. Congratulations. You're now Gaius Delphinus, citizen of nowhere and friend to none. With your new name in place, you head into the city proper. You aim for Sabura District, where people are less likely to ask questions and more likely to need warm bodies for unpleasant tasks. The crowds are thicker here. Laborers, merchants, pickpockets, philosophers selling snake oil. Everyone's hustling. Everyone's loud. You try to copy their swagger, walking like you belong, chin up, arms loose, try not to look like you're absolutely faking it. A man offers to sell you blessed fish sauce that smells like regret and betrayal. A woman yells something about Juno's vengeance and throws a sandal at a passing senator. Historians still argue whether Rome's daily life was as chaotic as its written records suggest. Some claim it was orderly, structured. Others point to graffiti, satire, and recovered slum debris as evidence that most of Rome was essentially a frat party with plumbing. You stop by a small shrine to Minerva and pretend to pray. Mostly, you just need a minute to think. A few denarii clink into the offering bowl, and you consider grabbing one. But the way the statue of the goddess stares at you feels personal, like she personally smite you with a migraine. Now that you have a name, you need a role, a reason. Rome doesn't do freeloaders. Even being a slave means you have a clearly defined purpose. You overhear a group of scribes bickering over tax records and nearly convince yourself you could pretend to be one. But then they start arguing about whether a specific barley shipment was miscounted in Attic or italic measures, and your soul exits your body. You're not cut out for accounting. You wander into a marketplace and try to mingle with the crowd. A man with no teeth offers to sell you authentic Egyptian linen. It's clearly fishnet. Another man in a stained toga gestures you over. You look strong, he says. You don't. I need a new assistant. Carry scrolls. Make copies. Clean ink pots. Easy. This could be it, a job. You nod. Yes, sir. Gaius Delphinus, at your service. He squints. Your accent's funny. You panic. I was kicked in the throat by a Gallic mule. He laughs so hard he wheezes. You're hired. Success. You just landed your first Roman job as a glorified paperweight. Still, it's a start. You follow him to a cramped office near the Forum. The walls are lined with scrolls, most unreadable, some clearly just shopping lists with dramatic flair. You spend hours dusting, stacking, and pretending you know what the phrase in perpetuo agricolae vectigalia means. You don't. No one does. You learn that your boss's name is Flavius, and he's what passes for a bureaucrat. Underpaid, overcaffeinated, and obsessed with minutiae. He talks endlessly about census errors and postal fraud. You nod a lot. By the end of the day, your hands are ink-stained, your knees ache, and your stomach is staging protests again. You're paid with a half loaf of barley bread and a lukewarm date. Apparently, you're still on trial. Walking back toward your sleeping spot, you feel a strange mix of pride and horror. You have a name, you have a role, but it's all tissue paper floating above a fire. One wrong word, one misplaced scroll, one actual Roman recognizing your borrowed accent, and it all burns down. As you pass through a crowd of chanting augurs, priests interpreting bird guts to predict market prices, you hear someone mutter your name. Delphinus. You freeze. The voice isn't familiar, but it's saying your name. You spin. No one's looking directly at you, but the sound came from the direction of the Temple of Saturn. You edge toward it, heart pounding, ears tuned for more. Nothing, just the wind, the gulls, the faint laughter of a city that chews up its nameless wanderers and spits out bones. But the message is clear. Someone knows you're not who you claim to be, and you've only just started pretending. The next morning, the sun practically smacks you in the face. It's not gentle. It's the Roman Empire version of an alarm clock. No snooze button, just searing heat and a chorus of feral dogs fighting over what appears to be an old sandal. You rise stiffly, back still sore from sleeping on stone, toga curtain now resembling a crushed cabbage more than a robe. But you've got bigger problems. Someone, something, whispered your name yesterday, and it wasn't Flavius. He barely remembers his own name. You try to shake off the paranoia, but in Rome, paranoia isn't optional. It's survival. Your feet lead you back to the office, a cluttered scroll cave where Flavius is already sweating through his tunic and arguing with himself about taxation under Domitian versus Nerva. You smile weakly. He doesn't notice. You're basically background furniture at this point. You stack a few wax tablets, copy a few lines of census data you don't understand, and occasionally swat away the office lizard that keeps trying to eat the ink cakes. But the unease lingers. That name, Delphinus, in that voice, it could have been coincidence, could have been the wind, or, more realistically, someone's onto you. This is Rome, after all. People spy for fun here. There are entire social ladders built on blackmail, betrayal, and passive-aggressive toga choices. Historians still debate just how tightly the average Roman citizen was watched. Some argue there were systems of surveillance, especially in big cities like Rome. Others claim the sheer chaos of urban life made policing identities practically impossible unless you were rich or interesting enough to be watched. You, tragically, are becoming the latter. Around midday, Flavius sends you to deliver a scroll to someone named Septimus, down in the forum, near the statue with the missing nose. That's half the statues, but you nod like you totally know what he means. You set off with the scroll clutched like a sacred relic. The forum is a stew of noise, smells, and opinions shouted too loudly. You push through vendors hawking dry dates, philosophers debating fate versus chance, and a man claiming he was abducted by a sea serpent who taught him to sing in Etruscan. You find the statue, eventually, and the man Septimus, lounging under like he owns the dust. He's thin, sharp-eyed, and smells like expensive oil and judgment. "You're the new one," he says before you even introduce yourself. "Flavia sent me." You mumble, offering the scroll. He doesn't take it. He studies you instead, like a wolf might study a slightly injured deer. "You don't belong here," he says, almost kindly. You blink. "In the Forum?" "In Rome." You try to play dumb. "I'm Gaius Delphinus from the southern province." You throw that out because southern sounds vague enough to be believable. Could be Spain. Could be Sicily. Could be somewhere with no extradition treaties, if that's even a thing yet. Septimus finally takes a scroll. Doesn't open it. Just smiles like he's seen this game before. "Watch your step, Delphinus. There are people who'd love to know where you came from, especially if it's not from a womb." You walk away fast, heart thumping, stomach churning, scroll delivered, but nothing feeling done. It hits you hard. This isn't just about fitting in anymore. You're being watched. Maybe not by the city as a whole, but by someone. Septimus wasn't guessing. He knew, and if he knew, he could tell others. Others with actual power, or worse, interest. Because here's a fun fact. In ancient Rome, curiosity didn't mean people asked you polite questions. It meant they tortured you until your story made sense, or made them laugh. Whichever came first. You duck into a bathhouse, hoping for a breather, not to bathe. Gods no. That costs money, and you've got half a piece of barley bread and an IOU from a chicken. But the bathhouse is loud and crowded, which means safety, at least temporarily. You sit near a pillar, watching steam curl through the tiled room. Men of every status parading around like nudity is currency, which here it kind of is. You eavesdrop. Always eavesdrop in Rome. You never know who's revealing which scandal, which betrayal, which mistress is sleeping with which senator and secretly funding a temple to Bacchus. And then you hear it again. Delphinus. Clear. Distinct. Behind you. You spin, slipping slightly on the wet floor, hard in your throat. But it's just a kid, maybe 12, holding a small wax tablet. He looks bored. "Message," he grunts, handing it to you. You crack it open. The writing's crude, but the message is clear. You're not the first. Meet at the basilica steps at dusk. You read it twice, then burn the tablet in the steam room brazier, like someone who knows what they're doing. You don't. You just saw a merchant do it once, and hoped it looked cool. Back at the office, Flavius is too deep in a tirade about grain weights to notice you're half floating in existential dread. You nod along, your mind buzzing. Not the first? Does that mean there were others like you? Time jumpers? Or just people pretending? Is this some weird underground club of misplaced souls and bad Latin accents? That night, you make your way to the basilica. The light is dimming, the streets going quiet. The Forum clears out like a tide pulling back. Statues cast long shadows. You sit on the bottom step. Try not to look as nervous as you feel. Eventually, a figure sits beside you, hooded, silent. You wait. Then you learn fast. You glance over. Can't see the face. Just eyes, half-lidded, tired. You're one of them? No, but I watched one. That does not make you feel better. They never last long. The voice says they get caught, or they try to get back. Either way, Rome finds them. You swallow. And you? I observe. The figure rises. Be careful, Delphinus. Rome is old, but it's hungry, and it loves a mystery. They vanish into the shadows like they've rehearsed that line for weeks. You sit there a while longer, knees pulled up, trying not to feel like the city is staring back. Because it is. The basilica steps are cold by the time you finally stand up. You didn't notice at first. Your brain too busy spiraling in 20 different directions. You tell yourself it's fine. This is fine. You're in a city where people still wear sandals made from goat stomachs. You'll blend in. You just need to lie better, walk faster, and maybe, just maybe, learn what you're actually doing here. You trudge back to your alley nook behind the bakery, half expecting to find it occupied by a new street philosopher or a cat with an attitude. But no, it's still your little patch of cracked stone and mildew blanket. Home, sweet home. That night, your dreams are chaotic, a swirl of toga-clad figures whispering your name, faceless statues turning to watch you, scrolls unraveling endlessly, spelling out things you can't read. You wake up sweaty, confused, and vaguely smelling of figs. The sky is still pink when you head back to work, if you can call it that. Flavius greets you with a grunt and an ink stain already spreading across his tunic, like a map of disaster. You pretend everything's normal. Smile, copy some numbers, nod sagely at his long-winded tirade about how the Senate is full of donkey-headed frauds. But by midday, you're unraveling. Your mind keeps returning to the message. You're not the first. It's not just paranoia anymore. It's a breadcrumb trail. And now you need answers. So you do something bold. You take a scroll, one of the less important ones, probably about wheat storage in rural Etruria, and pretend it's an urgent delivery. You tell Flavius. Official courier business. And to your amazement, he nods distractedly, too deep in a monologue about the postal system's moral decay to question you. You bolt, not toward the forum, not toward your alley, toward the library of Palatine Hill. If anyone in this era has secrets worth finding, it's buried under dusty scrolls in a building so full of knowledge it might actually judge you for breathing too loudly. You've never been in a Roman library before. It's quieter than you expect. Not silent. Nothing in Rome is, but the hush here feels sacred. The marble is smooth, the clerk serious, the air filled with the smell of ink, parchment, and ambition. You approach a long table and scan the scroll labels. Nothing says manual for time-lost weirdos. Sadly, but you find a section labeled Cognition's et de mirabilibus, Cases and Marvels. It's the closest thing you'll get to a local X-Files division. You pull out a scroll with shaky hands and start to read. It's slow going. The Latin is formal, the script ornate, and your language skills are mostly built on overhearing bakers argue over change. But one case jumps out. In the reign of Antoninus, a man was found wandering the Subura claiming knowledge of machines of fire, distant lands of shining towers, and stars mapped in glass. He vanished after being questioned by augurs. You blink. Read it again. It's vague. Could be anything. But it feels familiar, like a static shock to your spine. You dig deeper. Another scroll tells of a woman who appeared in the Tiber, speaking a tongue no one knew, wearing strange cloth with no seams and clutching a small glass object, thought to be a foreign oracle. Taken to temple, disappeared within a week. There's a pattern, a few names, a few dates, always slightly different, never conclusive, but enough to confirm you're not alone in your weirdness. You never were. Historians still argue whether these Roman accounts were misinterpretations, exaggerations, or evidence of ancient encounters with phenomena we'd now call paranormal. Some chalk it up to propaganda. Rome loved a good mystical tale, especially if it made them sound important. Others suggest these could be early accounts of psychological breaks, brought on by stress or illness. But your gut tells you these were people like you, dropped here, unexplained, unprepared. You're about to copy a few lines down when someone clears their throat behind you. A tall man in priest's robe stands there, gold-threaded trim, eyes like polished marble. "You're reading restricted material," he says smoothly. You freeze. The scroll nearly slips from your fingers. I was told to research miracles for a Flavian religious census. You lie, the words tumbling out like scared pigeons. He narrows his eyes. There's no such census. Your mouth goes dry. Then he smiles. But perhaps there should be. He gestures for you to follow. Against every fiber of reason in your body, you do, because in ancient Rome, not following someone in a fancy robe could be more dangerous than saying yes. He leads you through side corridors, past dusty busts and unlit alcoves, until you reach a small chamber lined with odd relics. Broken tools, twisted metal, fragment of what might be, if you squint, early gears. He turns to you. "You're not the first to ask strange questions," he says. You don't respond. Because what do you say? "Hi, yes, I woke up here in a curtain and keep finding time orphans like me in footnotes." Instead, you nod carefully, like someone who's done this dance before. "I study anomalies," the priest continues. "Deviations, those who step sideways through the world." You blink. "You believe me?" He smiles faintly. "I don't need to believe. I observe." He walks to a shelf and lifts a box, setting it on the table. Inside you see objects, unfamiliar shapes, a curved shard of glass, a tiny stone with etched symbols, a coin that looks suspiciously like it has a lighthouse on it. "These came from others," he says. "All gone now. Some taken by the Senate. Others vanished. None stayed long." Your heart races. "Why are you telling me this?" you ask. "Because you need to decide," he says. "If you're going to survive, you need to choose. Hide or learn. Blend in or dig deeper." He hands you a small wax tablet. "Come to the temple of Janus at sunrise, but only if you want answers." You take it, hands trembling, your mind spinning. You're not just a glitch in Roman time anymore. You're part of something bigger, stranger, maybe even dangerous. As you leave the library, the sun is already dipping low again. Rome is glowing in that warm, deceptive way it does, beauty wrapped around a core chaos. You tuck the wax tablet deep into your tunic. Tomorrow you'll go to Janus. Tonight you just try to sleep, though you already know you won't. You're up before dawn, which is a small miracle considering how many times you woke during the night thinking someone was hovering over your face whispering Delphinus, like it was some kind of Roman ASMR. You lie still for a while, watching the city slowly yawn to life. Birds squabble overhead. A cart rolls by with one very vocal goose protesting its transportation situation. The air smells like charcoal, sweat, and just a whiff of mystery. You pat the wax tab on your tunic like it's a secret passport. The Temple of Janus. That's where you're going. To meet a man who collects weird artifacts, believes in sideways steppers, and offers answers like they're street snacks. Totally normal Tuesday. You move quietly through the streets, head low, steps light. The forum's mostly empty. The statues watching in that way that makes you wonder if they've always known more than they let on. Janus himself, god of beginnings and transitions, seems appropriate for this next step. Also, the guy has two faces. That's not symbolism. That's a warning. The temple isn't grand, not like the Pantheon or those palaces you're definitely not allowed into. It's older, tucked into a bend near a small market square. Its gates still half-shuttered. You hesitate, then push inside. It's quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder if someone's about to say something ominous. Instead, you find the priest. Same robe, same marble stare, waiting beside a column carved with twin faces, one looking forward, one back, and for a second you feel it, that tug again, that sensation like you're not fully glued to this timeline. You came, he says. You nod, suddenly aware of how loud your heartbeat is. Good, he continues. Then it's time for context. He gestures to a bench, and you sit like you're being interviewed for a position you didn't apply for. The priest begins to speak, his voice slow and deliberate, like each word has to be chiseled into your memory. There have been others, he says. Not many, a handful, scattered across generations. Always alone, always confused, always wrong in the same small ways. Speech, gesture, memory. He opens a small scroll and unfurls it. Diagrams, notes, some barely legible, but you spot one drawing, crude but recognizable. A wristwatch. These people, he continues, appear with strange tools, spoke of faraway cities that don't exist, describe machines powered by thunder and light. You gulp. And what happened to them? Most vanished. A few were arrested, accused of sorcery or madness. One was made a spectacle in a gladiator arena before he simply disappeared. A gladiator arena. Right. Because if there's anything that makes you blend in less than modern slang, it's screaming Wi-Fi while dodging swords. There's a pattern, he continues. They all arrive at moments of transition. Political unrest, religious flux, times when the veil, he actually uses that word, between past and future grows thin. You raise an eyebrow. So, why me? Why now? He looks at you then. Really looks? We don't know. Not yet. But the last one left something behind. He reaches into a satchel and pulls out a folded parchment, carefully wrapped. He opens it slowly, reverently, and reveals a single page filled with notes in near-perfect Latin. But one sentence is in English. Your breath catches. This isn't the first collapse. Don't trust the timelines. You stare at the page, trying to process the insanity. You're not the first. And whatever this is, it's happened before. Not just time travel. Not just popping into ancient history by accident, but something deeper, something unstable. The priest watches your reaction carefully. You understand this language? You nod slowly. A little. He closes the parchment. Then you're further along than the others were. You take a breath. Try to anchor yourself. So, what now? Am I supposed to go on some mission? Find some relic? Stop a war? The priest actually laughs. Quietly, but still. A Roman priest laughs in your face. You're thrilled. No, he says. You survive. You learn. And maybe if you're wise, you disappear. Not exactly the hero's call to adventure you were expecting. But before you can argue, a sharp voice cuts through the chamber. There you are. Flavius said you were dodging work. You flinch. It's Septimus, the smug forum lounger from earlier. He stands in the doorway, arms folded, eyes full of suspicion. What are you doing here, Delphinus? He asks. You scramble to your feet. Paying respects to Janus? He snorts. The only thing you respect is being mysterious. You've got people asking questions about you. People who don't like questions. The priest nods faintly. He should go. Septimus eyes him. You always attract the odd ones. You slip past him, out into the light. The air feels heavier now, like it's pressing you down. Septimus walks beside you in silence for a while, then mutters, Whatever game you're playing, you'd better figure out the rules fast. You believe him, because here's the truth Rome doesn't write in stone. This city isn't a static museum. It's a beast. It breeds, it hunts, it remembers. And you become a curiosity, a thread dangling from its neatly woven toga. Historians still argue how much ordinary Romans suspected about the stranger things happening in their empire. Some claim the people were more mystical, more superstitious, and would have seen an anomaly as divine. Others believe they were skeptical, practical, and would have thrown you in the Tiber with a brick for being weird. You're starting to suspect both are true. That night, you don't go back to your alley. You find a quiet niche near the aqueduct, curl behind a stack of clay pots, and you think about the note, about the man who wrote it, about timelines, plural, and you realize something. You're not just here instead of your time. You might be here because of it. The priest called a collapse. And maybe, just maybe, it's not over. You don't sleep that night. Not really. You lie there with your back against a warm stone wall, eyes flickering toward every shadow, every rat's footfall echoing to the aqueduct's hollow guts. The note repeats in your head like a fever. This isn't the first collapse. Don't trust the timelines. At some point, you try counting Roman emperors to fall asleep, but honestly, there are just too many and half of them died under suspicious circumstances anyway. It doesn't help. By dawn, you make a decision. If you're going to survive here, not just dodge gladiators and smell like centuries-old olives, but really survive, you need to understand what collapse means. Not just Rome's. Yours. So you do what any lost, time-stranded person would do in this situation. You follow the breadcrumbs. Literally. You head back to Flavius and that endless scroll pile, because if anyone's documents might contain the whispers of weirdness, it's a guy who hoards correspondence like it's a competitive sport. When you show up, he barely glances at you. Ah, good. You're late, he mutters. Put these in order. He drops a stack of reports onto your desk, which is at this point just a flat slab of stone that permanently smells of mildew and crushed fig. You nod, act casual, but your eyes flicker toward the top scroll. Something about a grain shipment from Alexandria delayed by celestial anomalies. Over the next few hours, you work with suspicious efficiency, sorting out the boring stuff quickly so you can steal glances at the strange bits, complaints about time skipping in sundials, rumors of temple fires that relight themselves, livestock walking backwards at dawn. Okay, that last one might just be drunk farmers. Still, you're starting to see a pattern. Something's off about this particular year in Rome. It's more than politics or petty corruption. There's a buzz in the air. Like reality's gears aren't quite catching right. And then, in one scroll from a military outpost near the Rhine, you see it. A name, Delphinus. You sit up straighter. It's a report about a deserter. A soldier who claimed he did not belong here, that he came from a place with flying machines, and that his name, written shakily, was Delphinus, the same name the priest called you, the one that's been following you like a bad nickname. But this scroll is dated decades ago. Another Delphinus? You feel that now familiar chill creep up your spine. You're not just not the first. You might be a recycled glitch, a role played before, a loop in someone else's story. Before you can investigate further, Flavius speaks up. You know, the augurs came by this morning. He says absently, "You look up. The bird guys." He nods, dipping a reed into ink. They're unsettled. Keep seeing fork flight patterns. Says it's a sign of overlapping omens. You raise a brow. Overlapping? He shrugs. When the gods can't decide what path the future should take. You pause. That feels important. Historians debate to this day whether Roman augury was superstition or a genuinely complex early system of probability and pattern recognition. Either way, the Romans took it seriously. If birds flew weird, decisions changed. Armies turned around. Marriages got postponed. And if the future's trying to walk down two roads at once, maybe that's your collapse. After lunch, you fake a stomach ache, because no one in any era questions the power of a digestive emergency, and slip away from the archive. You head back to the Temple of Janus, hoping the priest is there. He is. He's sweeping the steps, which is deeply unsettling in a divine librarian moonlights as janitor kind of way. You show him the scroll, point at the name, ask quietly, "Was this one of yours?" He studies the parchment for a long time. "I remember him," he says finally. "He came with stories of moving images trapped in small boxes, described the stars as mapped highways, said the year was 2431. You blink. That's way ahead of me." The priest nods. He lasted longer than most, until the Senate heard. And then he doesn't answer, just looks up at the arch of the temple, where Janus stares in both directions, forward and back. Then he hands you something small and round, a coin, but not Roman, not remotely. It's made of a dark alloy, etched with numbers you don't recognize. Binary code? A date? A serial number? He left this behind. The priest says, he said it was a save point, whatever that means. You close your fingers around it. It's heavy, unreasonably so for its size, like it contains a memory or a warning. On your way out, the priest says, "Be careful who hears your name. It's not just a label, it's a file path." You're pretty sure that was either super profound or absolute nonsense. Still, the city seems sharper when you step back into it. Every statue's gaze, every echo of sandals on stone, every senator's whisper floating like pollen on the air. You head to a bathhouse, not for a soak, because let's be real, shared water during this era is just ancient soup. But for the gossip, You sit in the shade near a group of retired centurions arguing over whether Emperor Marcus Aurelius actually wrote his famous meditations or stole them from a Greek slave. Modern historians still debate that one too, by the way. Some say his Stoic writings are too introspective for a man so busy keeping Rome from catching fire. Others insisted a real deal, scribbled during long campaigns in tents surrounded by yelling. While they bicker, you overhear something that makes your skin crawl. Said he saw a man vanish, right there on the Palatine steps. One moment here, the next gone. Magic? No. Said it was like light folded around him. You lean closer. Didn't catch his name, but someone called him Delphinus. You don't breathe. You get up slowly. Walk away before they see your face. Because that's two Delphinuses now. Both of them flickering. Vanishing. And you? You've been glitching. Seeing double. Feeling like you're echoing through time. You start to wonder if Delphinus isn't your name. It's your designation. A placeholder for someone pulled out of time again and again. Reused. Rewritten. And if that's true, what happens when the story runs out of room? You don't go back to Flavius's archive after that. Something about the way your name, Delphinus, floats through other people's conversations makes your skin buzz. It's like you become a ghost haunting your own body, and the body's starting to ask questions. Instead, you head for the rooftops. Not metaphorically, literally. You climb, because there's something about altitude that makes things clearer. Maybe you're hoping for a bird's eye view of your own unraveling. You find a ledge overlooking the Subura, Rome's loudest, smelliest, most vividly alive neighborhood. This is where laundry flaps like surrender flags. Kids throw figs at goats, and vendors shout at each other like they're casting spells. You perch there, watching a world that thinks it's stable, that believes in aqueducts and gods and the predictability of sunrise. And you wonder how long it is left. Rome falls, you remember. Eventually, not in a single boom, but in tremors, in slow rot, lead in the pipes, barbarians at the borders, and emperors who declare war on the moon. Yes, that happened. Emperor Elagabalus once reportedly sent orders to the moon goddess. Scholars still aren't sure if he meant it or was just really into celestial performance art. But what if the fall wasn't just political? What if it was dimensional? You turned the coin over in your hand. The save point. You stared at it, so long you half expected to talk back. It doesn't. It just sits there, smug and inscrutable, like every device you've ever owned. That night, sleep ambushes you somewhere between your third and fourth philosophical spiral. You dream, if it is a dream. You're not in Rome. You're in a corridor, metallic, flickering with fluorescent light. You can hear your own footsteps, bare, echoing. You pass rooms filled with glowing panels, tubes, something humming like a heartbeat. A woman's voice speaks from nowhere. Calm, robotic, Delphinus protocol active. Timeline fragment detected. Memory instability at 42%. You wake up at the start. Cold, mouth dry, still on the rooftop. Your hands are clenched around the coin so tightly the imprint is stamped into your palm. Okay, so that wasn't your usual lost in a toga shop dream. Later that day, you go back to the priest, not because you want to, but because he might be the only one who has any idea what you're becoming. He doesn't look surprised to see you. You felt it, he says, before you open your mouth. You nod. You've seen places that shouldn't exist, he continues. Heard names that were never written. Spoken words you didn't know you remembered. You nod again, slower. He gestures you into the temple. The light from the oculus cuts the space in two, like a knife through fabric, forward and back. Janice, you're unraveling, he says. Not just you, the tether between you and your time. Can't be fixed? You ask, trying to sound braver than your internal panic spiral allows. That depends on what fix means to you. He walks to a stone chest and pulls out something wrapped in oilcloth. Inside is an object that shouldn't exist. It looks like a circuit board half melted, half fused into what might have once been a Roman votive tablet. Bronze fused with silicon. Antiquity in future. Congealed like an idea no one was supposed to have. We found this buried beneath the old Mithraeum. He says, 3 years ago. No one could explain it, not even the augurs. They said the gods refused to touch it. You take it carefully. Feel the same buzz as the coin. Same hum of artificial memory. This isn't from here. No, the priest says, and neither are you. There's a moment, just a breath, where you consider chucking everything into the Tiber and learning how to fish. Instead, you ask, are there more of these? He looks at you, and something in his expression changes. Resignation or worry? There's one, deep beneath the forum, in a place we don't speak of. You blink. What, like catacombs? No, he says, older than that, buried beneath the layers of Rome, beneath the Republic, beneath the myth. Some say it predates the city itself. You pause. That sounds fake. He almost smiles. Yes, it does. Historians still wrestle with the idea of pre-Roman Rome. There's evidence, scattered, whispered, that the site of the city was sacred long before Romulus supposedly murdered his brother and did the whole founding civilization thing. Strange tombs, non-Latin inscriptions, geometries that don't match anything known from the ancient world. You take a breath. How do I get there? The priest walks to the wall and traces a line across the map of Rome, a crude scratch of ink and guesswork. He taps an area near the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer. Down, always down. You leave the temple with the fused tablet in your satchel and the distinct feeling that this story isn't about you anymore. Or rather, it's not only about you. The city itself is part of this. A puzzle box. A wound that keeps reopening. And you're just the latest symptom. You find a torch. You find rope. You find the worst-smelling grate in all of Rome and pry it open. The stink hits you immediately, sour and ancient and weirdly metallic. Down you go, into the arteries of the beast. This isn't a noble journey. There's no glory in it. It's wet. It's dark. It's loud with echoes that don't belong to anything alive. But somewhere ahead, something pulses. Not light, not sound. Something remembering you. You press on, breath shallow. Not for survival now. For truth, whatever it costs. The moment you set foot into the lower passages of the Cloaca Maxima, your sense of time starts to warp. Not dramatically. Not yet. It's more like your inner clock loses its grip. You'll take 10 steps and feel like an hour passed. Or maybe it did. You're not sure. The water drips too rhythmically, like it's mocking your attempt to measure anything. Your torch flickers against the damp, curved walls. Ancient bricks stare back at you, older than Rome, older than Latin, possibly older than recorded thought. They're stamped with patterns that look vaguely geometric. Hexagons inside triangles inside circles. Probably meaningless. Except they're not. You've seen them before. On the coin, and again on the tablet, the priest gave you. The same glyphs, repeating like a song only machines remember. You follow the priest's directions. Left, then right, then down. Always down. Until the air thickens. Until even the rats stop following you. Eventually, you reach a stone arch, one no Roman architect would have designed. It's too tall, too narrow, and shaped like a teardrop. Your torch sputters as you pass beneath it, and for a second, just a second, you swear you see stars. Not above, inside the walls. Then the stone reasserts itself. Cold, ancient, humid. Ahead lies a chamber. And oh, this is not Roman anymore. You enter what can only be described as a vault. Circular, impossibly wide, and lit by something not fire. A soft white glow hums from the ceiling. No torches, no oil lamps. Just a steady hospital-level glow that doesn't belong in any century you're supposed to know. You blink. Step inside. At the center is a platform. On it, a console. Not a Roman altar. Not even a machine in the traditional sense. It looks conceptual, like something imagined by a civilization that doesn't build with metal or stone, but with meaning. The console reacts to your presence. Panels light up. Symbols rearrange themselves. You don't touch anything yet. Instead, you step closer and read what's burned into the outer ring. Not Latin, not Greek, but English. Delphinus note active. Fragment stabilization required. You inhale sharply. This is your story's real beginning, and you were never meant to find it. A sound behind you makes you spin. It's not a rat, or a priest, or Flavius. It's a man, late 30s, wearing Roman garb, tunics, sandals, a whole kit, but standing like someone who remembers gravity working differently. His eyes flicker over you like scanning hardware. You're early, he says. You blink. What? You weren't supposed to find this place for another 36 hours, he continues. But then again, the system's been glitching since version 4.2. You stare. Are you another Delphinus? He smiles faintly. Sort of. You could say I'm between versions. He steps into the light, and for the first time, you realize what's been bothering you about him. He's you, or close. Older, maybe, but unmistakable. He sees your face and nods. Yeah, I had the same reaction. Don't worry, it gets weirder. You take a step back. He doesn't follow. I'm here because you hit the loop early. You're not supposed to remember this much, he says. But since you do, well, welcome to the archive. You glance at the console. What is this place? He shrugs. That depends which historian you ask. Because yes, believe it or not, scholars have debated the idea of ancient future tech ruin for decades. Fringe theorists argue that civilizations before recorded history reached advanced technological states and collapsed. Most mainstream historians scoff, unless, of course, you're standing inside one. Your doppelganger walks up to the console and presses a section of it that ripples like water. A projection bursts to life. You stagger backward. It's a timeline. Dozens of them. Twisting strands of events and years and people and choices. all revolving around one word, Delphinus. I'm a node, you ask. He nods. We all are. They, whoever they were, set this up centuries ago, maybe millennia. Every so often, something breaks. History stutters. A Delphinus gets inserted, not to fix it, just to observe. Observe what? He points to a segment in the timeline. You see Rome burning. Not once, dozens of times. Slight variations. Sometimes Nero fiddles. Sometimes he doesn't even exist. You're not here to change history, he says. You're here to keep it coherent, like a narrative patch, the way a dream keeps itself from collapsing. You exhale slowly. So I'm a time janitor, temporal lint roller, memory defragger, emotional continuity editor. You're not helping. He grins. Then his face darkens. There's a problem, he says. Something's rewriting the patch. You swallow. The collapse. He nods. It's not Rome that's falling. It's the construct, the container for this reality. And if it fails, we don't reset. Then what? We fragment. You feel the air thicken, like something unseen has joined the room. Can we stop it? He hesitates. Maybe, but it'll cost you. There it is. The twist. The catch. Because of course there's a price. What do I have to do? He reaches into his satchel, identical to yours, and pulls out another coin. This one's half melted. You've seen this before, he says, because you've used it before. He presses it into your palm. You need to find the mirror node. It's not here. It's further back. You blink. Back? As in further in history? Yes, he says. Pre-Rome. Pre-language. How am I supposed to get there? He looks at the console. Then it's you. You're going to reboot. You take a step back. Wait, what does that mean? But before he can answer, the chamber shakes. The light dims. The timelines on projection flicker like dying fireflies. He looks up sharply. They found us. You don't have time. And then, because apparently subtlety is dead, he pushes you against the console. There's a sharp pulse, and everything turns to white, like a flashbulb, like an idea too big for a brain. You don't fall. You drop into something older, darker, more raw than Rome ever was. And for the first time, you realize you were never in history. You were underneath it. You hit the ground hard. Well, something like ground. It doesn't feel like stone or soil. It feels alive, slightly warm, faintly pulsing, like it's breathing under you. You scramble up, heart pounding in a chest that no longer feels strictly Roman or strictly human. There's no sky above, just an expanse of shifting colors, red melting into violet, like someone turned the northern lights into wallpaper. The air smells metallic and sweet, like blood and fig syrup. This isn't Rome. This isn't Earth. You've been rebooted, and you are somewhere so old it hasn't even been named yet. You blink, adjusting to the unreal light. The coin is still in your palm. The same strange heat pulses through it. Your mind flits to that last sentence the other you said. You're going to reboot. This is it. The mirror node. The landscape stretches around you. Jagged ridges of obsidian. Forests of something like coral sprouting out of black sand. And there's architecture, if you can call it that. Spires that bend like bone. circles that float midair. No doors, no windows, just shapes that feel like meaning you haven't learned yet. You take a step, and the ground shifts beneath you, not dramatically, just enough to remind you you're not alone. From behind a ridge, it rises, tall, thin, wearing something like robes, only they shimmer like oil on water. Its face is a smooth oval, no eyes, no mouth, just a faint hum. You should panic. Your body wants a bolt, but something older keeps you still. It speaks, not in sound, but in thought. Welcome, Delphinus. You nod, because what else do you do when a memory made flesh greets you in a prehistorical server room? Who am I? You ask, your voice small in the vastness. You are at the root of time, of self. Okay, thanks, extremely cryptic time god. You glance at your coin. It hums louder now, syncing with the presence before you. I need to stabilize the fragment, you say, hoping you're using the right jargon. The collapse has already begun. The being tilts its head. Stabilization is not restoration. You must remember that. You frown. What does that mean? To preserve the structure, you must let the myth die. A pause. Somewhere in the air, the timeline's pulse. Barely visible ribbons floating above the landscape. One of them is smoking. Rome, you ask. The figure nods, though it never really moves. The myth must fracture so the pattern can adapt. You squint, but I thought I was here to save it. You are here to allow it to change. You sit with that for a second, then two, because it makes sense in a way you didn't want it to. Every empire dies, but not every story survives. And maybe Rome, the real one, had to fall so the idea of it could evolve. Into Europe, into law, into the eternal city that exists more in memory than marble. Historians still argue whether Rome's fall was a disaster or a necessary transformation. Some claim it marked the end of civilization. Others say it gave birth to the medieval world. The truth is probably somewhere in the rubble. You step forward. The being parts the air like a curtain, revealing a mirror, not a literal one. It's more like a vertical pool of mercury, fluid, rippling with scenes. You see yourself in Rome, in the archive, even in the sewer, but then it pulls back, shows other yous. A woman dressed as a centurion, a teenager in a library, an old man chiseling something into stone. Delphinus, you whisper, it's not a name. It is a role, a repeating node, the one who watches the story become itself. You reach toward the pool, and the surface bends. Touch it, and you risk forgetting. But don't touch it, and you lose the chance to remember fully. You press your palm into it. Suddenly, you're everyone. All the versions, all the failures, all the restarts. You are the patch. You are the myth's scaffolding. And in that moment, you feel empathy for yourself, awe at the sheer scope, fear because the collapse is accelerating. You pull your hand back, shaking. The being speaks again. The system must fragment to complete the reboot. Your task is not to hold it together. It is to witness the birth of meaning. A distant rumble shivers the ground. The sky cracks like eggshell. The coin in your hand grows hot. You feel it vibrating, ready to do what, though? You look to the being. How do I go back? You don't. What? That version of you is already decayed. This is your new point of origin. You freeze. You want to shout, to cry, to refuse. You didn't ask for this. You didn't sign up to become some kind of pretemporal librarian. But you did when you followed the glitch, when you listened to the priest, when you touched the console. This has always been about choice, or rather, acceptance. You close your eyes. You let the coin melt into your palm. You let the light swallow you again. When it clears, you are somewhere else. A market. No, a bazaar. People in every kind of dress, Roman to modern to future chic. A place out of time. A glitch market. You're back, but not in one timeline. In all of them, you are Delphinus, and your job has just begun. You're standing in a bustling bazaar, and it's honestly beautiful. Not just in the look at the vibrant textiles and impossibly symmetrical vegetables way. More like a fever dream dreamt by history itself. You blink and catch a man arguing with someone in Akkadian over the price of a toaster. A few stalls down, a toga-wearing child is selling data cards labeled Gregorian Calendar Patch 3.1. Yep, you're in the market that time forgot, or maybe one it never officially recognized. The signs overhead shift languages as you pass under them. Latin, Greek, Chinese, English, and one that looks suspiciously like emojis arranged into a philosophical sentence. You're not in any one time. You're in the place between them. The Glitch Bazaar, a pocket world maintained by whatever's left of the construct. A cross-temporal flea market of broken code and repurposed meaning. You walk slowly, trying to absorb it all. The smells alone can make your head spin. Saffron, motor oil, wet parchment, cinnamon, and ozone. Your new goal, if the being was to be believed, is to witness the story as it reboots, fragments, and ultimately stitches itself back together. You're not fixing. You're not rewriting. You're letting it evolve. And your first step? Finding the mirror node. Again, because nothing about this role is straightforward. You duck into a side alley where the vendors thin out, and the architecture loses any sense of symmetry. Walls lean at impossible angles. Doors hover slightly off the ground. You hear someone whisper your name. Not your name, but Delphinus. A gentle warning, or maybe a welcome. That's when you see it. A stall, dimly lit. No signage. Just a wide wooden table covered in artifacts from a dozen centuries. Scrolls next to cassette tapes. A Roman gladius balanced on a 3D printer. And at the center, a cracked mirror framed in bronze. You approach. Behind the stall sits a woman. She's old, not in the wrinkled way, but in the aged marble sense. Like time tried to erase her and gave up halfway through. Her eyes are black and endless. Her smile is small, as if she knows a punchline to a joke no one's told yet. You've come far, she says. Apparently, you reply, I'm looking for the mirror node. She gestures to the cracked mirror. You already found it, but finding's not the hard part. You glance at the mirror. Its surface ripples slightly, just enough to make your stomach lurch. Inside, you see flickers of events. The founding of Rome, the burning of Alexandria, a man in a lab coat screaming at a white screen. Every version of you ends up here eventually, she says. But most never ask a question. What question? She leans in, her voice dropping. Why do you want to witness the reboot? You blink. It's a good question. The kind of question a main character would normally face around Section 10. Give or take. You think back. Why did you follow the glitch? Why didn't you just keep selling wine and bartering with fishmongers in that cozy Roman alley? Because something in you wanted more, not power, not even truth. You wanted the pattern, the thing beneath the events, the connective tissue that turned chaos into meaning. I need to know how the story survives, you say. She nods slowly. Good answer. Not perfect, but good. She waves her hand over the mirror, and the cracks seal. The surface turns flat and dark. You'll walk through this, she says. You'll enter the moment where the narrative breaks. It's not one event. It's a compression point. History jammed too much significance into one fragment. You have to hold it long enough for the rest to catch up. You exhale, and if I don't, she smiles. Then it loops again and again until the weight crushes every version of you. Right, no pressure. She hands you a tiny object. Looks like a stylus carved from bone. This will anchor your presence. It won't stop the fragmentation, but it will mark where you end. You stare at it. What does that mean? She shrugs. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. You really hate how everyone here speaks in metaphors. You take one last look around the glitch bazaar. A vendor waves at you with what looks like a severed robot arm. Someone else throws a scroll into the air, where it vanishes in a puff of birdsong. Then you step forward. The mirror accepts you. The world inverts. Not visually, existentially. Like someone turned your sense of presence inside out. You don't feel your body anymore. You feel moments. The founding of Rome. The myth of Romulus and Remus. You're inside the story. Not watching it. Becoming it. You see the twins suckled by the she-wolf. You are the wolf. You are also the river, the spear, the prophecy. It should break your mind, but it doesn't, because this is your job, to witness, to anchor. You drift toward the moment of breakage. You see Caesar mid-assassination, but now the senator's glitch. One wears a modern business suit. One flickers between being Brutus and being you. The timeline is skipping like a scratch disk. This is a compression point. Too many meanings piled into one death. You take out the stylus. You stab it into the ground, not literally, because you have no body, but symbolically, a flag in the heart of confusion. The fragmentation pauses. Not forever, but enough. You sense it, the timeline shuffling, the collapse slowing. Then you hear a sound, a voice from nowhere. You held it. Well done. It's the woman, or maybe the being from before, or maybe you. Hard to say. You can rest now, the voice says. But of course you can't, because this is only the midpoint. There's still more of the myth left to unravel, and you're not going to let it reboot without you there to see it happen. You wake up face first in a pile of olive branches, not metaphorical ones, actual scratchy twigs poking your cheek, and some very judgmental pigeons looking down at you like you've interrupted their extremely sacred sunbathing. Rome again, but not the same one you left. The air smells different, more incense, less sewage. You sit up slowly, scanning the forum. The crowds are thinner. The statues were more Christian symbols than laurel wreaths. And someone nearby mutters the name Constantine, like it's the weather forecast. Ah, you've landed somewhere around the early 4th century. The empire is shifting again. This is late Rome. The nobody panicked, but we're all definitely panicking phase. Politics are less about the Senate and more about bishops shouting at each other in Greek. You dust off your tunic, still somehow miraculously intact, and stagger into the square. You're not here to blend in anymore. You're not even here to prevent anything. You're just the observer now, the living recorder, Delphinus, the last audience member in a play that refuses to end. You pass a group of soldiers sharpening their spears and arguing about some obscure theological schism. One of them gestures wildly and yells, "Arianism is not heresy," like he's defending his favorite band. Historians still argue whether Constantine's conversion to Christianity was a sincere spiritual awakening or just really clever PR. Either way, the empire is undergoing a full-on identity crisis. Pagan temples are being shut down. Old gods are quietly exiled. And Rome, the eternal city of 1,000 myths, is being rebranded. You find yourself drawn toward a building under construction. Not a temple, something stranger. Round walls, mosaic inlays, the voice of a child inside reciting a prayer or a memory. You step inside and immediately feel it, the resonance. This place isn't built for worship. It's built to contain something. At the center sits a smooth circular pedestal, and on it another coin. No inscription, no emperor's face. Just the same pulsing symbol you've come to dread and recognize. You're not sure what it means anymore. Eternity? Glitch? Recursion? The child looks up at you. He's maybe 10, but his eyes are far older, like he's seen this timeline play out a dozen times, and still hasn't gotten used to the ending. He holds out his hand. "You're here to see it again," he says. You nod, because what else do you do when a possibly time-bound proto-priest invites you to the next level of your existential fever dream? You approach the pedestal. The coin lifts itself, hovers, spins. The room dims, not visually, but historically, like the light is made of memory, and someone turned the dimmer switch down on the empire. You watch the timelines begin to fray again. Not tear, just unravel. Slowly, pieces drifting. You see Constantinople forming, like a crystal reef. You see the Western Empire shrinking, buckling under the weight of its own borders. You see bishops trading theology like poker chips. And in all of it, you're watching yourself. Not you, but echoes. The version who saved the archive. The one who fell in the sewer. The one who witnessed the glitch. They're all pointing toward this moment. The coin pulses. And then, a shift, the empire fractures. Not loudly, not even suddenly, just permanently. You see Odoacer deposing Romulus Augustulus. A child emperor shuffled offstage while the curtains quietly catch fire behind him. This is it. The fall. Except it's not a fall so much as a pivot. Because life keeps going. Fields are still plowed. People still pay taxes. But the idea of Rome collapses like a worn-out scaffolding. And you're not heartbroken. You're humbled. Because Rome was never one thing. Not really. It was myth. It was convenience. It was law. It was theater. It was oppression and brilliance and sewage and aqueducts and bureaucracy and poetry and violence and dinner parties. It was always too much to fit into one timeline. You feel the story shift inside you. Lesson time. If you were hoping for a tidy moral, sorry. But the best you're going to get is this. You can't preserve a story by locking it in place. You preserve it by letting it breathe, letting it morph, letting it pass through time like wine through amphory, always changing, always flavored by the vessel. That's what you're learning here. Standing in the echo of a dying empire, the child hands you the coin. It's almost over, he says, but not for you. Of course not. Your job isn't to save Rome. It's to carry what it meant, a myth walking forward. You step outside. The sky is cloudy now, not ominous, just soft. You look toward the horizon and feel something stir. There's more to see, and you're not ready to sleep just yet. You leave the city behind. Again, Rome, that stubborn, crumbling tapestry of ideals and aqueducts, fades into the mist like a story someone's half forgotten. The path ahead is strange, unpaved, and weirdly quiet. Too quiet. Gone are the street criers, the donkey carts, and the passive-aggressive senators. Instead, it's mist trees and the occasional bird doing its best dramatic monologue. You glance down. The coin the child gave you sits heavy in your palm. Not physically. It's more like it's dragging something behind it. History, maybe, or expectation. You press forward. Then you hear it, rhythmic thudding. Not ominous, just persistent. Like someone in the distance is really committed to their interpretive dance routine. You crest a hill and stop. In front of you is a field, flat, green, oddly geometric. At its center, a group of armor men are practicing battle formations. But they're not Roman. Their shields bear no eagles. Their helmets aren't standard issue, and their language is a garbled mix of early Germanic and medieval French. Ah, you've landed in the in-between, the weird puberty phase of Europe. Welcome to the early Middle Ages, the part of history everyone calls dark, because the paperwork got messy and people stopped building marble fountains. It's not dark here, though. Not really. The sun is out. Someone's baking bread nearby, and a hawk is circling overhead like it's waiting for a poetic metaphor to land on. You approach the training field. One of the men notices you and waves you over. He's large, beardy, and seems convinced that yelling is the only acceptable volume for introductions. You lost? He asks cheerfully, like a friendly troll guarding a tourist trap. You nod, mostly because you are lost, and he seems like someone who'd appreciate honesty. I'm following a story, you say. He blinks. Are you a bard? A monk? You shrug. A little of both. He claps you on the back, so hard you nearly visit the afterlife. Then you want to talk to the old one. Because, of course, there's an old one. You're led to a small hut at the edge of the field. Inside, a woman sits with her back to you, weaving something on a loom. The room is warm, smoky, and filled with scrolls. Some are half-burned. Some are written in a language that shifts while you look at it. Come in, she says, without turning. You do. She gestures to the stool beside her. You sit. I've been expecting you, she says, which is always equal parts comforting and ominous. I'm tracking a myth, you say, or maybe being tracked by it. I can't tell anymore. Same thing, she replies. You glance at the loom. She's weaving images, not just patterns. You see a battle, a church, a crown, a man writing furiously in a cold room. Then the threads shift, and you see yourself. You recoil slightly. So I'm part of it now? You always were. Of course. You watch the threads tighten, not unravel. You're seeing the middle, she says. The part most people skip. You mean the fall of Rome? No. What came after? The rebuilding, the forgetting, the rebranding. People think history ends with collapse. It doesn't. It just edits itself. She pulls a thread, and an entire scene dissolves. There were kings who never ruled, she says. Monks who saved books no one would read for centuries. People think the Middle Ages were all mud and torches, but they were layers, some bright, some dark, all necessary. You gnawed slowly, absorbing the weight of it. Historians still argue whether the term Dark Ages is fair. Some say it was a time of ignorance and isolation. Others insist it was rich with cultural fusion, oral traditions, and quietly preserved knowledge. Both may be true. You lean closer to the loom. What happens next, you ask? She smiles faintly. That depends. Are you done being character? You blink. What? She stands, slowly, creakily, and turns toward you. Her eyes are sharp, too sharp. They see through timelines like smoke. A character waits to be told what happens next. A witness chooses to see it. The room pulses, and the coin in your palm glows faintly. You feel it, the next layer rising, like something buried beneath centuries of dust and echo, a surge, a rebuild, the Renaissance, maybe, or something stranger. You stand. She hands you a bundle wrapped in cloth. Take this. You open it slowly. Inside, a pen, a scroll, a broken fragment of a Roman standard. What do I do with this? You ask. Whatever the story needs. You leave the hut. The field is empty now. The soldier's gone. The hawk has landed on the training post, watching you like a very judgy librarian. You turn your face toward the east. Time to follow the light, even if it flickers. You walk through fog that doesn't belong to any season. It's not cold, not warm, just timeless. It clings to your skin like memory, dense with echoes and almost voices. You tighten your grip on the coin, the scroll, the broken Roman standard, the trifecta of someone who's either a prophet or very confused. The path slopes downward, gradually at first, then steeply, like history is tilting you toward a specific moment, whether you ask for it or not. And then music, faint, not the pipes or lyres of Rome. This is more delicate, plucked strings and fluted notes floating above soft stone streets. The fog lifts. You're in Florence. Not just any Florence, Renaissance Florence. The air hums with paint fumes, candle wax, and the overwhelming certainty that everything here is important. You barely have time to take in the pastel buildings and narrow alleys before someone grabs you by the sleeve. Where have you been? The man says. He's wearing a tunic that costs more than your self-esteem and smells like oil paint and ego. The master's been waiting. He drags you, no questions asked, through a series of winding streets until you're face-to-face with a man hunched over a sketch. He doesn't look up. About time, he mutters. You stare. The hair, the nose, the impossibly intelligent forehead. It's Leonardo da Vinci. Either that or a very committed impersonator. You're not sure why you're here, but Leonardo doesn't care. He gestures to your scroll, the one the old woman gave you. That symbol, he says. Where did you find it? You blink. Rome. He nods, like that explains everything. I saw in a dream. Painted it once in a fever. They said it was nonsense. He opens a drawer. Inside, sketches, notes, diagrams. One page shows the exact same coin, your coin, floating above a man who looks suspiciously like you. He slides it toward you. "I've never been to Rome," he says quietly, "but I remember it." You sit overwhelmed. The workshop around you smells of charcoal and brilliance. In one corner, a half-finished flying machine looms. In another, a dissection sketch glares like it knows too much. You realize this isn't about memory anymore. It's about inheritance. The Renaissance didn't invent itself. It inherited fragments, Roman law, Greek ideals, forgotten scrolls preserved by monks with too much ink and too little daylight. And now those fragments are shifting again. Leonardo leans in. The world is remembering itself, one brushstroke at a time. You nod slowly, but it's remembering differently. He laughs. Of course it is. Memory isn't preservation. It's reconstruction. That hits you harder than expected. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance was a genuine rebirth or just clever marketing. Was it a sudden eruption of brilliance, or the slow return of buried knowledge filtered through centuries of chaos? Probably both. You stand and walk to the window. Below, the city teems. Philosophers arguing in courtyards, merchants shouting about silk, painters squinting at shadows on fruit. Everyone here seems to know they're part of something big. You envy them a little, but also you know what's coming. The illusion of order, the hunger for empire, the slow, patient machinery of colonial ambition, ticking beneath the surface. You turn back to Leonardo. Does it end here? He looks up, finally meeting your gaze. End? This isn't an end. This is a refrain. History doesn't repeat. It harmonizes. And sometimes it changes key. You reach into your satchel and show him the broken Roman standard. He laughs again. "Ah, so you are a carrier. You're about to ask what that means when a bell tolls in the distance. Deep, solemn, final." Leonardo stiffens. That's not a city bell. The walls of the studio start to shimmer. Reality phrase, as it always does when things are about to shift. You clutch the coin. The room goes still. Leonardo nods toward you. Wherever you go next, remember this. Genius doesn't appear from nowhere. It needs echoes, ruins, half-remembered songs. You're part of that. The fog returns, not quite white, not quite gray, but the color of unspoken memory. You're lifted again, through brushstrokes, through maps half-drawn, through statues mid-carve. The Renaissance slips away like silk through your fingers. You're traveling now, not on foot, not through streets, but through resonance. You're becoming less a person and more frequency. You hear voices. Galileo arguing with the stars. Machiavelli writing with one eye on the door. Mary Shelley dreaming up monsters while history chews on empires. And you're floating between it all. Not dead, just transitional. Which, honestly, is starting to feel familiar. You don't land this time. You settle. Somewhere modern. Somewhere strange. And there, waiting on a bench in the middle of a too-clean plaza, is someone holding a phone. They wave at you, the phone's glowing faintly. And on its screen, that same coin. Your journey's not over, but the path ahead looks digital. You blink at the plaza. It's too clean. Not just swept, algorithmically sanitized. trees are evenly spaced, benches are unnaturally symmetrical, and there's an ambient hum that sounds suspiciously like AI-generated birdsong. The kind that's been approved by 6 committees for maximum emotional neutrality. The person on the bench is watching you like they've read your Wikipedia page. They're dressed in a sleek hoodie that somehow looks both futuristic and aggressively minimalist. You can't tell if they're 25 or 2 centuries old. You made good time, they say, holding up the phone. It glows faintly with a spinning image of the coin. Your coin, or bad time, hard to tell anymore. You sit beside them, cautiously. The bench adjusts to your weight with a sigh, as though even the furniture here is tired of the timeline. So what now? You ask. Am I in the future? They shrug. You're in the memory of the future, the part where everything's archived but nothing's understood. You take that in. Around you, people stroll by in smart fabrics, talking to themselves in 12 languages. Drones hum overhead. A giant billboard flickers with an ad for something called Neurosoft Living History. Relive the past, correct the narrative. And just behind it all, invisible but ever-present, the digital city purrs. You're not walking through time anymore. You're walking through versions of it. The person beside you gestures to the phone again. They've been simulating Rome, they say, over and over. Different algorithms, different outcomes. You frown. To what end? Control, curiosity, maybe comfort. People love the idea that if they'd been born in the past, they'd have made better choices. That's the fantasy. A playable Rome with cleaner water and fewer plagues. You almost laugh, but it gets caught in your throat. The app on the phone shifts. You see flashes, augmented coliseums, crowds cheering in VR headsets, virtual senators arguing in Latin with subtitles. Historians still argue, they say, whether this level of simulation is a miracle of preservation or the death of actual memory. You nod, because nothing's lived anymore. It's just rendered. They glance at you. You've actually been there. You've touched the mud, felt the rot. You know the real Rome. You shake your head slowly. I don't know if I know it, but I've walked it. They hand you the phone. Then maybe you're the only one who can remind them what it was. Not what they want it to be, what it was. The screen flickers. You see yourself, your shadow in ancient streets, your hands in sewers, your breath misting in Renaissance Florence. I didn't ask for this, you say quietly. No one asks. They reply. The story picks its carrier. You look up. The sky isn't blue. It's filtered. You see satellites drifting like lazy thoughts. See trails of digital data looping like constellations. You're in the future, but it doesn't feel forward. It feels recursive. Everyone here is obsessed with the past because they've forgotten how to live in the present. Rome, Byzantium, the Crusades, they're all packaged, themed, monetized. The past isn't gone, it's on sale. You stand. The coin in your pocket vibrates, faintly, like a heartbeat. You pull it out. Its edges are worn, but it still glows. You walk toward a nearby museum. Except it's not a museum, more like an immersive time theater. Above the door, glowing letters declare, Rome reborn, the empire as it should have been. That phrase stops you cold. As it should have been. You step inside. A massive dome opens above you, filling with projections. Virtual Rome, clean and idealized, stretches before you. No slaves, no blood, no contradictions, just perfection. This isn't memory. It's revision. You turn slowly, surrounded by tourists in haptic suits, reenacting sanitized Senate debates and buying digital laurel wreaths for their avatars. A kid runs past shouting, "I just defeated Hannibal with a crypto gladius." You look down at your coin. It pulses once, then cracks. A jagged line runs through its center. Not broken, just open. Something escapes from it. Light, yes, but also sound. A voice, not yours, echoing through your head. You must choose what survives. You stagger backward. This isn't about remembering anymore. It's about resisting. If this is what the story becomes, if it's flattened, simplified, gamified, then the weight of everything you walk through will be lost. The contradictions, the filth, the brilliance, the horror, the beauty, gone. Rewritten by people who've never smelled ancient bread or heard the panic in a fleeing senator's voice. You walk back outside. The digital city feels colder now. The person from the bench is gone. But on the seat, they've left something. A scroll. You unroll it carefully. Inside, your story. The sewer, the library, the orphan, the archivist, the echoing symbols, Leonardo's grin, the old woman's loom. It's not an ending. It's a manuscript, one you're supposed to finish. The sky pulses. You look up and see a doorway forming, not architectural. Narrative, like the story is cracking open for one last stretch. And through it, not a city, not a temple, just you, standing again at the edge of time. And this time, you're the one holding the pen. The pen in your hand isn't metal or feathered or glowed with ancient power. It's just a pen. Basic, cheap, the kind you forget on a bus. But somehow, it weighs more than a Roman standard ever did. The manuscript rolls slightly in your palm, its surface texture with centuries. Inked loops and dashes form a loose map, not of roads or empires, but of you, your path, your stumbles, your half-choices. It's a mess. Beautiful, though, like a fresco that's cracked in the right places. You take a breath, not because you're nervous, but because the air is different here, like a mix of musty parchment, salt, and static electricity. The scent of decision. You look up. The world has fallen away. No more holograms, no clean plazas, no stylized history apps or haptic coliseums. Just a field, one of those vast, open ones you only see in dreams. A horizon that feels impossible. Above you, twilight. Not quite night, not quite morning. In the middle of the field stands a figure. You approach slowly. It's you, an earlier version, smeared with sewer muck, sunburned from Roman streets, clutching a broken tile like a relic. The you who didn't understand yet, who hadn't watched Rome rise and burn again and again in every century's new disguise. They you look up and nod. The field ripples around you like a paused heartbeat. You sit across from your past self. Neither of you speaks. There's no need. The story has said enough. Instead, you both look down at the manuscript. The scroll unfurls between you, and the blank space at the end seems to glow a little. It wants to be finished. And suddenly you realize this whole journey wasn't about surviving Rome, or enduring the Crusades, or making sense of Florence's obsession with genius. It was about carrying something through all of that. Not a coin, not a symbol, but clarity. And here's the kicker. The last twist in a saga full of twisty Roman streets and twistier motives. History doesn't survive because it's accurate. It survives because someone cares enough to remember it honestly. Even the boring parts. Maybe especially the boring parts. You glance at your older self, future self, who's now scribbling in the manuscript, and you understand you're not being written about. You're being written by. You always were. A few feet away, something stirs. A structure is forming, built not of stone or code, but meaning. Memories as bricks. Symbols as scaffolding. A coliseum of thought, not blood. Its arches flicker with scenes you've lived. A boy begging for bread. A senator weeping at a mosaic. A woman weaving fire into symbols. The library. The sewer. The forum. The dome of Florence. The flickering ad in the clean plaza. All of it layers into the architecture. This isn't Rome. This is your Rome. It's not perfect. That's what makes it last. Historians still argue whether we can ever truly know the past, whether memory and fact can ever align, whether history is evidence or just story with footnotes. You can't answer that, but you can offer this. A walk, a coin, a chance. You stand and leave the manuscript resting in the field. Let someone else find it. That's how it works now. The story doesn't end with you. It continues through whoever picks it up next. Because that's the true shape of history, not a line, but a relay. You turn toward the horizon. It's morning now. Somewhere a rooster crows. Anachronistic, yes. But you let it happen. It's your story after all. You walk slowly forward. Not because you're tired. Because you're ready. And because after everything, after all the bloodless coups and dusty alleys and philosophical migraines, you've earned a sunrise. So now you're still. Just you. The faint warmth of morning light brushing your cheek, and the long echo of a journey that stretched farther than any road Rome ever built. The manuscript lies open behind you, fluttering gently in the breeze. Pages not yet dry, ink still settling into its final shape. Someone will find it eventually. Maybe they'll add a chapter. Maybe they'll rewrite one. Maybe they'll just sit beside it and wonder who walked these paths before them. And you finally get to rest. Your legs stop aching. The pressure in your chest, like the weight of too many centuries trying to sit in one soul, eases. The air smells like wildflowers and old stone. You close your eyes. You can still hear distant footsteps, philosophers arguing, centurions barking orders, market sellers shouting over figs. But they're soft now, background hum, because that's what history becomes, in the end. Not a wall of sound, not a lecture, just a presence. A hum you carry with you. Sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's warm, but it's always there. And maybe, just maybe, you've learned that surviving history isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being willing to witness, to listen, to walk through it honestly, and to hand the story off when your part's done, which finally it is. So exhale, sink deeper into the quiet. The world's still out there, still building empires, losing them, writing stories, forgetting them, and trying again. But for now, just breathe. Let the last of the Roman dust settle off your shoulders. Let time move on, without you for a bit, and sleep. You've earned it.